they should have been already at the Jackson.
Have a supplemental report basically to explain what you just gave to the jury, correct?
Yes. So the original report stated that the testifiers would be returned with the firearm. So an amended report was issued stating that the testifiers had not been returned as the report had indicated that they would be. And then because the item of evidence had to be brought back into the laboratory, an additional report describing that now we're adding the testifiers to the box was also issued. So there's 3 reports in this case. The original one describing the test firing of the firearm, that it functioned. The second report correcting the remarks, and the third report describing that the testifiers were being added back to the box.
Thank you so much for clearing that up. Now you said that, well, let me ask you one other question. When you received that firearm, you don't know anything about it other than that this is your job to analyze this firearm, correct?
I mean, there may be information in the case comments, but in this case, I don't believe that there was a lot of information about where the firearm had come from or, where it was found. I don't think I knew that in this case.
All right, and so you don't know who owned it, who fired it, when it was last fired, or anything along those lines?
No, so like I said, I would say it had not been fired since it was last oiled, but that could have been a week prior, a month prior, or a year prior. I don't know, but not since the last cleaning.
Understood. And so speaking about the oil, you said that it was generally clean, but it was a little oily or very oily in your opinion, correct?
Yes.
You can't tell us if that oil was cleaning oil, if it was the preservative oil that you described, or anything like that?
No, I didn't do any analysis as to the type of oil that it was.
Okay, so it could have just been regular preservative oil that you put, as you described, in order to keep the gun operating, functioning properly, correct?
I don't have any reason to suspect that it's anything but.
But that.
But yes, the preservative oil that I don't know what kind of oil it was, but I don't expect that it's anything but what you said.
Thank you. You stated that just when you were kind of explaining the mishap with the test fires, that you observed kind of a unknown material in the barrel of the gun, correct?
Correct.
You communicated with the biology section within your organization, FDLE, to ask for them to take a look at that, correct?
Yes, I did.
And in fact, someone from the biology section, Mr. Nicholas Kutu, did come and look at that and to analyze that for you, correct?
Well, just to look at it.
Okay. So he did in fact look at it.
He did.
And he decided not to do anything, correct?
Correct.
He didn't take any swabs, he didn't do anything with it. He said it wasn't anything whatsoever.
Well, he said it, I'm sorry, I don't know how to get into what he said without going
Well, that's
getting
fine.
to
You don't have to
hearsay,
tell me that. But
he declined.
Sorry, I'm over talking you. Go ahead.
He declined to swab it.
As far as the gun itself, the reason why you were doing test fires, just to maintain that it was operating properly, is because you didn't have anything to compare it to. You didn't have any bullet fragments or anything like that, correct?
Correct. In this case, I received no fired cartridge cases and no fired bullets.
And as far as what you found in your analysis, there was nothing of relevance to any sort of murder occurring that you discovered.
So the only thing that I can really say in this case is observations that it's an oily firearm. The firearm appears to be in normal working order. I test fired it, and it functioned properly while I test fired it.
Thank you. Nothing further.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Ms. Draga, Ms. Draga, good to see you, ma'am. Have a good rest of your day.
Your Honor?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
State, you can call your next witness.
Thank you, Your Honor. Edward Smallfeld.
Sir, good morning to you. Just watch your step as you come forward to your right. Need a glass of water, let us know. We'll do our best to accommodate you. The only thing I ask is that if there's an objection made during the course of your testimony, just pause, let me rule on the objection, and then we'll go from there.
Yes, sir.
With that said, state your name and quiet, you're ready.
Thank you very much, Your Honor. Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
You please introduce yourself to the jury.
My name's Edward Schmalfeld. I'm the general manager at Otis Road Landfill.
All right, and just generally speaking, where is the Otis Road landfill?
It's on the west side of Jacksonville, off of Otis Road, near Beaver Street.
And, sir, with respect to your position as general manager, what are your duties there as a general manager?
In charge of overall operation of the landfill, every aspect of it, from financial down to what the employees are doing out in the field.
And how long have you been working in that capacity?
At Otis Road, I've been there just over 5 years.
And how about working in this field? How long have you worked?
Since 2008, I've worked in landfills.
Now, do you live here in Jacksonville, sir?
Yes, sir.
How long have you lived in Jax?
Since, in Jacksonville area, just over 5 years as well. But I've been in Northeast Florida since 1993.
All right. Now, sir, I want to direct your attention to January 15, 2019, moving forward about 3 weeks to February 6 of 2019. Do you recall that time period, sir?
Yes, sir.
Were you working in the same capacity at the Otis Road landfill during that time period?
Yes, sir.
Are you the boss?
I'd like to think so. Yes, sir.
Right. Now, did the police come find you and talk to you at the front end of that time frame on or about January 15 of 2019?
They did.
And for the purpose of what?
They were doing an investigation on a missing person.
All right. Did they ask you to search your landfill?
At that initial conversation, they did. They were asking general questions about the landfill, and we're looking at possibly doing a search, yes.
All right, and did you cooperate and assist the police?
Absolutely.
Now, when you first were speaking with the police, did you kind of give them an idea of how the landfill itself is operated?
Yes, sir.
All right. Did you go through them the general summary procedure of how waste comes in?
Yes, sir.
All right. Is that still the same procedure that's in effect even today?
Yes.
All right. Can you give our jury just sort of a brief walkthrough of, like, if a truck pulls up there with waste, take us from there. What happens next?
Sure. So we have a truck come in. We have a scale house up front. It's the first thing you see when you come to the facility. The trucks will pull up on the scale. We have scale house attendants who talk to them. They'll identify their company, what their truck number is, where they're coming from, if they're like Duval County, Clay County, and then if they have any other special information like project numbers or whatnot. Once they do that, they'll be weighed in. We'll give them a scale ticket, and they'll be directed to the active working area of the landfill. And once they get up there, we have heavy equipment operators and sometimes a spotter who's directing them exactly where to go. And once they get into their spot, they tip or they dump their load out onto the on top of other garbage. At which time, once they pull out, we'll have a bulldozer come and they will push the garbage kind of wherever we're working in that day, because we're building it up as we go. And once that happens, we have a landfill compactor that's about twice as big as a bulldozer, has big cleated wheels. It rolls over the garbage. We're trying to pack it in as tight as we can so that we don't waste all that space. And we kind of rinse and repeat all day long.
Yes, sir. Now, excuse me, just a couple questions about that procedure. When someone pulls in a truck, do you in any way have your staff search the vehicles before they come in?
No, it's all in a can. It's very hard. Not every truck even has an open top. We do have cameras that generally look at the truck, but we depend on the drivers to identify what they have. And then once they get up on top, we can, we work with it from there. We can see it, but at the scale house, that's the limit of what we can do.
Now, with respect to I think you called it a weight ticket that they receive, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Once they receive the weight ticket, how are they directed where to go inside the landfill?
Initially, it's by the scale house attendant. They'll tell where to go. Sometimes if we've changed up something, we'll give them a map on where to go, and then we have signs along the way that direct them where to go.
All right. And you mentioned, once the waste is pushed out of their particular vehicle, you do it in levels. It's piled one on top of the other. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. We try to do 5 to 7 foot lifts as we go to build up to our engineered design elevations.
And you also mentioned you had what's called a landfill compactor that packs it in tighter. Can you explain specifically what's the general purpose for doing that?
So for a landfill, we have this imaginary bubble on top, and that's as much garbage as we're allowed to put into it for the whole life of the site. And so our goal from the Florida Department of Environmental Protection, and obviously as a business, we want to maximize how much garbage we can put in there. So we try to densify that garbage to make it as tight as possible. We get about 1,400 to 1,600 pounds per 3 by 3 by 3 area. So we try to get it as tight as we can.
And can you give our jury a sort of an estimate of the height that you build the waste up to, generally speaking?
It changes as we go, but as our permit is now, it's about 150 feet total height when we're finished with it.
Now, can you give us an idea of how many trucks are coming into the landfill on a daily basis as an estimate?
So at that time, it would have been somewhere around 150 to 200 trucks per day on a normal day.
And would that have been the approximate trucks arriving during the time period that we're talking about, December of 18 and January of 19?
Yes, sir, approximately.
That's an estimate at that time.
Yes.
Right. Now, what specifically would you need to know to be able to tell the police where specifically to search in the landfill?
First and foremost, I need to know the date. What day are we talking about? Obviously, with that many trucks coming in, we move periodically, so I need to know the date. And then knowing the truck and company that brought it in would allow us to go and look at our scale house records to verify that it actually did come in.
All right.
Those are the two big pieces of information.
And we've already had some testimony about that, but did the police advise you of a date?
Yes.
Did they advise you of the company that brought the waste in?
Yes, it was actually our sister company, the hauling company, and they told us the location it came from. Yes, sir.
Was that All American, the sister company?
Yes.
All right. And I think it's already been established as well, but did the waste they were looking for come from Ace Pick Apart?
It did.
Did those factors help you in sort of pinpointing to the police where to conduct their search?
Yes, sir.
All right. In general, how big is the entire landfill?
So at that time, we were working on a footprint of about 8 acres. The whole cell that we're working on was 10 acres, but we hadn't finished it all yet. So about 8 acres was the working area.
Okay. Now, with the factors that you had, the date they were looking for the particular waste, the company that delivered it, and where it came from, the business where it came from. With those 3 factors, explain to our jury how you're able to tell them where to go in that particular landfill. Is there a method to this?
So there's a couple tools we used. First, we fly aerials of the landfill pretty much on a monthly basis with a drone, so I could refer back to the prior one. Second, we have an engineered sequence that we put garbage in, so it's already designed kind of where we go. So that's another tool. We can vary a little bit, but that's another tool. And third, just being out there every day, we know we don't just plan one day ahead of time. We're looking at 6 months at a time. So it was very easy kind of to say, hey, over the last 3 or 4 weeks, we've been working in this area.
All right. Is it safe to say the entire landfill is a massive area?
Oh, absolutely. Right now, we're already at 40 acres. It's huge, especially when looking for small things.
Right. In December 2018, leading into January 2019, I think you described it as how many acres at that time?
The landfill itself was about 8 acres of usable space at that time.
All right. Of those acres, could you tell us where specifically you sent the police and the acreage that you directed them to assist them in their search?
Sure. It was, it would have been kind of on the western portion, middle of the landfill. It was I think we estimated around 3 to 4 acres was kind of the general area that we were searching.
And if the police came to you in January 15 of 2019 and you knew they were looking back at the date of December 19 of 2018, how far down did you give them as an estimate to do their search to look for that area of waste?
So we looked at all of our tonnage that had come in between those two periods and looked at kind of how well we were packing it. We came up with about 20 feet, 25 feet, somewhere right in that range.
So did you then give the police the 3 to 4 acre period and a 20 feet depth length to conduct their search?
We did, yeah. We isolated it immediately when they said they were going to want to do a search. So when we knew that, we isolated the area.
Sir, is that a massive undertaking?
It was, yes. I mean, we debated on if we actually had to potentially close the landfill temporarily, because taking out half of our total footprint and you don't get to work on all that, it was a substantial thing. Having kind of two operations going at once, it was outside the norm. We actually even contacted the Florida Department of Environmental Protection just to make sure we legally could do the search and continue to operate.
Yes, sir. Now, once the search began, just a few more questions for you, sir. Once the search began, what was your role during that time period from mid-January to early February? What were you doing to aid the police?
Lots. So they initially had their entire team come out. I guess it was the search management team. And first thing we did is we went over a lot of safety concerns that I had. Obviously, it's a landfill. It's lots of pointy and sharp things, potential for somebody to get injured. They talked about what they thought the process would be to do the search, asked my thoughts on that. I provided my feedback. Then once they started the search on a daily basis, there was a morning briefing. I was part of that, especially as they brought new searchers in, and just reiterating the safety aspects of what's going on and explaining how the rest of the landfill is running, just so we don't, again, get anybody injured. During the search, my team was using the heavy equipment that worked hand in hand with the search teams, and we would excavate and spread out the garbage that was going to be searched. And once it was cleared, we would take that and put it over to another designated area so it wouldn't get commingled with, the search area. We didn't want to search the same material twice. And then there was a debrief at the end of every day that I was part of. And then there were a couple off-site meetings downtown here. I think the sheriff was at one or two of them, just kind of with updates. So we were part of that as well. And then me and my team were actually out there, getting dirty, getting our boots dirty and helping however we could with the search team, especially when you get into some of these deeper areas. It's a little more dangerous. You got to be more familiar with what you're doing.
Yes, sir. And then the last couple issues for you. The type of waste. Will you describe for our jury what you allow or what is permitted inside the Otis Road landfill?
Sure. We are what the DEP calls a Class 3 landfill, which allows us to take construction and demolition debris, which is probably about 85% of the material we get, which is cardboard, 2x4s, drywall, sheet, all that kind of stuff, concrete. We also can take some soils and things like that, but the big thing that we don't take is food waste, any kind of waste that can break down, create an odor. We don't take liquids, but it's primarily construction and demolition debris.
And because you don't take food waste, does that generally keep the active bird life, like buzzards, from infecting the various areas of your landfill?
Correct. Yeah, we rarely have birds, and if we ever do see a bird, that's when we kind of key in if somebody brought in something they weren't supposed to, and we have to go get it and take it out of the landfill. All
right. And can you give the jury an idea of a few major companies and or contracts you have to kind of explain the types of waste that would come in there?
Sure. So we really work with every company you see driving down the road, except Waste Management in general. So Republic Services is a big one. Now it's GFL Environmental, but it used to be All American Roll-Off. So they're roll-off trucks. They're the big cans that you see when they're building homes and whatnot. That is primarily what we get at our landfill. Sometimes we'll get some dump trucks, but all the major companies within Jacksonville bring in material, as well as smaller, like the Ace Pick Apart, like they're one-offs, but they're brought in by one of the larger companies as well.
All right, and what do you mean by a one-off?
They're not like this national, they have one location. So we have numerous customers who just have a office or a construction yard. They have one can that is sitting there that gets picked up.
Is a good example of the type of waste you receive Goodwill?
That is a waste that we do get, but I wouldn't say that's a good example of the typical waste. It's more construction waste. Goodwill does come in, but they're really the only type of person who routinely brings in that type of waste, which is a lot of furniture, carpet, toys, clothes, that sort of thing.
Yes, sir. And then lastly, were you able to, and if so, first explain how you were able to add up all the tonnage, all the amount of waste that was searched by the sheriff's office during those approximately 3-week period?
So we looked at it a couple different ways. One, obviously, the drone flights we're going over, so you can do calculations based off of the flights, looking at what it was before and where it was at the end. And also looking at the hole that we dug, knowing that, okay, it's about this long, this wide, this deep. You can do a calculation of the approximate amount of waste that was taken out. And then on a daily basis, we would look at how many buckets the excavator took out and kind of estimate it. So use multiple methodologies, and they kind of all corresponded. So we felt comfortable. It was give or take that I think it was 5,000 to 5,500 tons that we thought we went through.
And for our record, just to make sure it's clear, what is a ton? How much is that?
2,000 pounds.
You did 5,500 tons of garbage and waste searching.
Yes, sir.
One moment, Your Honor. Sir, can you lastly just give us a, you know what the police were looking for,
Yes.
and you know the area that was covered. Would you describe that as like looking for a needle in a haystack?
Yeah, absolutely. Based off of the time from initial notification to when we kind of got down to that 20-foot depth, extremely difficult. I've had instances in the past where somebody has come in and they knew exactly the truck. They got there before the truck, and we still couldn't find it in an individual truck. Obviously, different types of things. It was a purse or something like that. It's very, very difficult to find anything once it hits the ground at the landfill, especially 3 or 4 weeks out.
Yes, sir. One moment. Thank you, Your Honor.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
All right, let me just follow up on a few things here. So I know that you guys actually started searching January 15th of 2019, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
But you actually had stopped, you got notification that they wanted to search almost a week, maybe even a week and a half earlier than that, correct?
Approximately, yes, ma'am.
Okay, and so at that time, when you received notification that police were wanting to search the area, you guys no longer dumped in that area where you believed this particular dumpster that they were looking for had been in, correct?
Correct, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
So did you cordon that area off essentially to make sure that no further activity happened where you would be searching?
We put some berms of dirt up around the area, and then at the scale house, they directed the trucks, the new location to go, and the heavy equipment operators made sure they went there.
Okay. As far as the type of, I know you described being class 3 and Goodwill in particular. So it would not have been abnormal for clothing to be in that search area that you isolated for this particular search.
No, ma'am.
Okay. And you actually were a part of the search for most of those days, if not all of the days, that police were searching at the landfill.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And you actually were in the hole, like physically there, seeing and observing what was being pulled out and kind of managing, making sure safety procedures were followed and things along those lines, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so you actually saw the excavators taking out pieces and kind of laying it out in the search of what was in there.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And so did you yourself observe clothing and other items, typical things that you would see, as well with construction materials?
Yes, ma'am. There was a mixture. Yes.
I know that you talked about kind of how you got to this particular area, this depth, this amount of acreage that we're going to search. My question for you is, when you came to that conclusion, that wasn't something that you just guessed or estimated, right? You actually used the scaler that when people come in to determine how many tons had come in at that time to get to that estimate.
Yes, ma'am.
So there was actual data that you referenced and looked to so that you'd be confident that you were in the right area and searching the amount that was sufficient to be able to get to that dumpster that they were looking for.
Yep, to the best of our ability. Yes, ma'am.
And during that search, I know you've talked about it being more than 5,500 tons that you guys went through, which is a massive amount to search, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. In going through that, you were confident that you reached the area that that dumpster would have dumped in, correct?
We were in the, yes, I think we were within the area that we had established to start with, in terms of the length and width area, for sure. In terms of depth, that was our initial kind of calculation assumption. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And then as far as that amount that you gave, 20 feet deep, 3 to 4 acres, you actually overestimated the amount to make sure that that was in that December 20th dumpster would be included, correct?
Yes, ma'am. And more the length and width, just because we wanted to, be thorough, and things can get pushed a little bit to the side, so we want to make sure it was all inclusive. Yes, ma'am.
And just to confirm, the 5,500 tons that you searched would have covered that 3 to 4 acres and 20 feet deep area that you estimated, correct?
It should have. Yes, ma'am.
And throughout that search where you were physically there, you never did recover any sort of body or anything like that, correct?
No, ma'am, we did not cover her body.
And I just want to kind of go back because I know you said that now it's like 40 acres, it's quite a bit larger. It was quite small at the time compared to other landfills and dump sites, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Sorry.
It was, I'm sorry.
No,
It
go
was closer to the start of the landfill, so we were much smaller back then, especially compared to the other landfills in Jacksonville.
Okay. And I know you said that you did confirm that that particular dumpster came from Ace Pick-A-Part.
Yes, ma'am. That's what the scale house ticket indicated, and that was the normal route, routine for that truck.
And the type of waste that you would receive from Ace Pick-A-Part was kind of a mixture of a lot of things. Is that accurate?
Yes, ma'am. It would have been, if I recall, it was auto parts, boxes, cardboard, that sort of material.
Including anything that might be inside the vehicle as well, emptying out the contents of any vehicles that they might receive.
Yes, ma'am. Potentially, yes.
As far as the presence of any sort of buzzards or things like that, in your experience, you said that, if you did notice them, which you did from time to time, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. If you did notice them, then that would be an indication to you that maybe food waste or something like that was there.
Potentially, yes, ma'am.
Because that's the type of waste that you don't receive or don't allow to come into your facility.
Correct.
Okay, in those cases, you would then go out, as you said, and actually remove that food waste or materials that you don't allow.
We would try to locate it, yes, and if we could, we would dig it out.
Okay, so for example, if there was something dumped that was not supposed to be there that would attract buzzards and then it was compacted down, if during a search that then is being pulled up and exposed, would that cause buzzards to come into that area?
Potentially, yes, ma'am.
Okay. And so it doesn't mean necessarily that there was a body there.
Correct.
It could just mean that there was food waste there that shouldn't have been there.
Yeah, potentially, yes, ma'am.
One moment, Your Honor. Nothing further.
No redirect, thank you, sir.
Sir, good to see you.
Thank you.
Have a good rest of your day.
You too. Thank you.
State, you can call your next witness.
Yes, sir, the state of Florida would call Johnathan Quiles.
Members of the jury will probably take a break at the conclusion of this witness, depending on the length, or maybe the middle. We'll see how it go.
Solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you give will be the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do.
Right this way, sir.
We here to your right, Mr. Lindros. Good morning to you, sir. Hope you're doing well. If you need a glass of water, let us know. We'll do our best to accommodate you.
Yes, please.
Mr. Gray will certainly take care of you for that. If there's an objection made during the course of your testimony, just pause. Let me rule on the objection first, and then we'll go from there, okay?
Yes.
With that said, State, you may inquire ready.
Thank you, sir, give me one moment.
Thank you.
Okay, please, court, good morning, sir.
Good morning.
State your name, please, sir.
Jonathan Lindros,
And where are you employed?
Ace Pick Apart,
And can you tell us how long you've been employed at ACE?
approximately 7 years.
All right. What is your title there, sir?
I'm the general manager.
And do you share that responsibility or role with your brother?
Yes.
Is he also a general manager?
Yes, sir.
Is that Gary Lindros?
Yes, sir.
All right. Will you spell your last name for us, please?
Lindros.
All right. Now, Mr. Lindros, would you tell us what your responsibilities are there at ACE as general manager?
General management duties of the facility, the outside production workers, some HR responsibilities, including advertising and interviewing for new employees, and general HR roles.
Is your supervision generally of what we'll refer to as outside employees?
Primarily, yes.
Okay. What, do you supervise also the in-office employees?
Yes, I do.
Can you just give us a general breakdown of approximately how many outside employees you have versus inside employees?
Outside employees, about 16 or 17. Inside would probably be about 10.
Is there a supervisor in between your level, general manager, and the outside employees? And I'm specifically asking you about December of 18 to January of 19.
There was a supervisor employed at that time, Larry Carlson. He was out on leave for surgery at the time for a couple of months, so he was not there at that time. So at that time, the answer would be no.
So during the time period of December of 2018 through January of 2019, did the 16 outside employees' direct supervisor, was he not there on a daily basis?
Correct, he was not there.
Were you standing in his stead and doing his job during that time period?
Yes, sir.
Was that in addition to your duties
Yes, sir.
as general manager?
Correct.
Now, just in general for our jury, I know we've already seen a little bit of some photographs. What kind of business is this? Explain what you're doing there, you and your brother.
It's a combination, automotive recycling business and retail sales of used auto parts.
All right. And at any given time, approximately how many vehicles, again, focusing on the late 18 going into 2019 year, approximately how many vehicles would be on your property or premises during that time period?
Somewhere between 2,500 and 3,000 at that time.
Now, with respect to areas of restricted access versus open to the public access? The jury's going to watch some videos later, but just in general, will you tell us, sort of explain the difference of those areas within the business?
We have a retail shopping area when customers come onto the facility where they would go to the cars and pick the parts off the cars themselves while they're shopping. And then we have our production areas where the cars are cleaned, drained, crushed, that type of thing.
And approximately, just on any random day, is it pretty busy there?
Yes.
Could you give us an estimate, maybe how many customers come through there on a daily basis?
During the week, 200, 250 on a daily basis. On the weekend, depending if we have a sale or not, it could be between 350 and 600 people per day.
All right. Now, will you give us a general idea of what the 16 employees that work outside in the yards, what sort of how that's categorized? Are they working in teams? Are they working as 16 individuals? Explain that for us.
We have a production flow. We get approximately 40 to 50 cars dropped off at our facility per day. 40 to 50 cars get crushed per day. When a car comes in, we'll have a couple of guys clean the garbage out of the cars, take the battery out of the cars. Then we have a couple of guys that are draining the fluids out of the cars. And then we have a team that is taking those cars and setting them in the roads in the retail production area. We have a team of 2 people that are pulling those cars from the older cars that are ready to go to the crusher. A team of pulling those cars to go to the crusher area. Then we have a couple of people that are working our tire station to remove tires from rims, working our excavator, which is a big excavating machine with a claw to rip the motors out of the cars, and some wiring harness out of the cars. And then we have a team of people that would be putting the cars in the crusher, crushing the cars, and preparing them to be shipped out for recycling.
All right. Of the 16 employees, are almost all of them working as a pair or in a somewhat of a team?
I would say that is correct, yes.
Are there exceptions to that?
Exception would be if we had someone who would be a fix-it guy, facilities type person, just might be given individual projects. Hey, go do this, hey, go do that. Maybe working on equipment, servicing equipment, that type of thing. That kind of person would not be working on a team like people in the production workflow.
Sir? I want to show you, we get a little old school on you, show you a blown up map that's previously been admitted into evidence as State's Exhibit 32. Sir, do you see this map?
Yes, sir, I see it.
And will you give our jury, first and foremost, the road that's running right down the middle of State 32? What is that? What road is that?
Now, you're referring to Main Street?
The 2 yellow lines right down the middle.
Yes, sir, that would be Main Street.
Okay? And for a record, I'm going to draw my finger around your entire facility, and you tell me if this is correct.
No.
Okay?
That is you drew your finger around the, kind of the retail area.
Your Honor, may I have him step down?
That may be helpful.
Yes, sir. If you could step down, sir.
Yes, sir.
And, Mr. Skinner, before you go, counsel, feel free to reposition yourself as you deem necessary. Mr. Skinner, why don't you give counsel a chance real quick?
Absolutely, Your Honor. I'll wait just a moment.
Ms. Michelle, you can go either way, whatever you feel.
Judge, to stay out of the way of the jury.
So first, just tell us in States 32, what is this road down the middle?
Main Street.
And what do we see up here?
That is Dew Parkway or Hector Parkway.
All right. And if you would, just point to us and draw a line around your entire company.
Okay.
All right. And if you now would point to us where the point of entry to turn into your business and off of the road.
This is a drainage ditch with a railroad track, and this is the only point of entry right here.
All right. One way in and one way out.
Right.
And where do employees park?
Employees park in this, anywhere in this parking lot right here.
All right. And the area that's at the top of this exhibit, it looks like it's somewhat unpaved. What is this area in the top portion?
That used to be a cement factory that was unoccupied for many years. We purchased it We now use it for our, we call it the downstream production. This is where the cars are currently crushed. At that time, to the best of my recollection, that was the time shortly after we bought it. So we weren't doing our production there yet, but we were storing some cars there, maybe cleaning cars out, that kind of thing.
In 2018, in December leading into January 2019, where were cars being crushed at that time?
At that time, cars were being crushed in this area right here.
All right. And will you now point to us where the main office where you generally work on a day-to-day basis is?
This is the main office right here.
All right. And then is the rest of the property where I'm drawing my finger around, is this where these, I think you said thousands of cars are on any given day in your business?
Yes, that's the retail shopping area that you drew your finger around.
All right.
So there's about 2,500 cars there, and cars waiting to go in that area would be about another 500.
So I'm now going to draw my finger on the bottom right-hand portion in this exhibit of your property. What is this area? What is done over there?
At the time,
Yes, sir.
over here is where the cars are drained. That area is where the excavating and the crushing was going on.
All right, thank you, sir. Do you know an individual that became known to you in October of 2018 as Jonathan Quiles?
Yes, sir.
And who is he to you?
An employee of Ace Pick Apart, former employee.
Do you see him in the courtroom today, sir?
I do.
Can you describe where he's seated and an article of clothing he's wearing?
He's seated to the right side of the courtroom. I see a white shirt from here, pulled back hair.
Yes, sir. May the record reflect he's identified the defendant.
So reflected.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Lindros, when was the defendant hired at your company?
In October 2018.
All right. Was he employed there from October of 2018 up until approximately January 8th of 2019?
Yes.
Is that about almost 3 months?
Yes, sir.
What were his specific responsibilities?
He would fill in for somebody if they were out. That might have been any of the roles we discussed. Draining cars, setting cars, pulling cars, crushing cars. So kind of a filling person if somebody called out. He did have knowledge in a few different fields, whether it was electrical or plumbing. So he was, I would call him a project/facilities person. He might have been moving a fence line, servicing equipment. It could have been anything.
All right. Of the 16 outside employees first, was he one of them
Yes,
during those 3 months?
yes.
And of those 16 outside employees, was he ever on a team of 2 or more, or did he always work as a solo employee?
It's a while ago, to the best of my recollection, was he in one of those roles right at the beginning? I don't think so. If he was filling in for somebody on a particular day, he would have been on that team for that day. But overall, in general, the answer would be no.
So just so our record's clear, because I asked you in the or manner, overall, generally, is he working by himself?
Yes,
Was he a punctual employee?
yes,
Did he work hard?
yes.
Now, did there come a time, sir, that he brought to your attention some fencing defects or fencing holes or areas where fencing might need some repairs on your premises?
Yes,
Did he send you something?
yes.
You recall to this day whether it was a text or did he hand it to you, or can you recall?
To the best of my recollection, well, I know, not to my recollection, I know that he handed me a piece of paper of a map that he made.
All right. So now I want to show you what's been admitted into evidence and marked as State's Exhibit number 30. Do you recognize this, sir?
Yes.
What do you recognize that to be?
That's a map that he gave me regarding possible defects in the fence.
Is it at all possible to tell today what date he handed that to you?
This was made on the computer.
Okay.
So this is probably something that I made based off of what he handed me.
Okay.
So do I remember when he handed me his hand-drawn map? No.
All right. Was it during those 90 days or so that he was employed for you?
Yes.
All right. And would you, I'm going to show it to the jury in a second, but will you describe what's around the edges, what is actually drawn on this particular exhibit?
Well, the whole entire property is surrounded by, I'm going to guess and say, an 8-foot tall, blue paneled, corrugated steel fence. There are certain places where employees might try to steal something. Maybe there's a gap underneath the fence, something to that effect. And the defendant was pointing out where the weak points in the fence or security might be.
Did he point that out directly to you?
Yes.
Did you and/or him or both make these markings on this exhibit?
This particular piece of paper looks like I took what he handed me and went on the computer and generated this
right.
with the photo.
And were you certain it was the defendant that was pointing these spots out?
Absolutely, yes.
Is there a blue line drawn around the entire property?
Most of the property, yes.
Okay. Within the line, are there circled blue dots on the line?
Yes, sir.
Are those the areas that the defendant was pointing out to you where there were either some sort of a area of the fence that needed repairs?
Yes, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Members of the jury, I think I failed to tell you this earlier. All evidence that's been admitted during the trial will be given to you during your deliberation, so you will get as much time as you need to review this evidence at a later date. I think I failed to tell you that earlier, but just so your knowledge.
Your Honor, because it's so faint, may I publish this to the back row? Let them look at it?
Sure.
Thank you, sir. Now, Mr. Lindrose, with respect to this particular item, was one of the defendant's duties to fix areas of fencing that might need repairing on your premises? Is that a job he would do?
He would do any type of facilities thing that we asked him to do.
Would that be one of them?
Yes.
With regard to where the defendant was allowed to go on your property and/or premises, did he have unrestricted access to every inch of your premises?
Yes, sir.
Would it be unusual to find him in the far back corner or in the office?
It wouldn't be unusual.
Now, Mr. Lindros, was there a particular day that when he brought you this particular item, can you even recall whether it was near the beginning of his employment, like the middle of his employment, or toward the end of his employment?
Closer to the middle.
All right. So at least he'd been there approximately a month and a half or so.
At least.
All right. So if he started in October of 2018, best your recollection today is he provided that information to you in November of 2018.
It could have been later than that, but it was at least November.
All right. And maybe leading into the early part of December of 2018?
Yes, sir.
Fair enough. Okay. Now, did he have a timesheet?
Yes, sir.
Could you explain for our jury what you expect and demand of your employees with respect to how they clock in and clock out?
Everyone has a time card. When they arrive at the facility, they grab their time card and clock into the time machine. They should clock in at the beginning of the day when they arrive. They should clock out when they leave for lunch, clock in when they return from lunch, and clock out at the end of the day.
All right? And they're told that.
Yes, sir.
Would the defendant have been told that?
Yes, sir.
So if we see him on video later leaving in the middle of the day and he doesn't clock out, that would be at a minimum against your policy.
Yes, sir.
Now, with respect to the time machine, the time clock itself, where is that located at that time?
We did move some operations. I'm trying to remember at that time. Currently, it's located in that cement factory area. At that time, I think it may have been located closer to where we saw the production on near the drain rack, and there's a yellow house in that area.
All right. Well, let me eliminate some other places. At that time, was it in the office?
It was never in the office.
Fair enough. So you never had to come into the office to punch your time card?
No, sir.
You mentioned the employee parking was running along the front part of the business. Is that always where the defendant parked that you were aware of?
As far as I was aware, that's where he always parked, in the same parking lot that the customers park in.
Generally speaking, can you describe for us, very generally, what vehicle you remember him driving at that time?
I remember it was a red minivan.
Now, with respect to the time clock, is it something that once you clock in, it reflects a time and produces a ticket?
Yes, sir. You have one ticket for the whole week, and throughout the week, you punch in and punch out as you come and go.
All right. Sir, now I want to show you what's been marked as State Exhibit 65. It has been admitted into evidence. So there's the state number.
Yes, sir.
And do you recognize that exhibit, sir?
Yes, sir, I do.
What is this?
That is Jonathan's time card for that week.
And by Jonathan, you mean the defendant, Johnathan Quiles?
Yes, sir.
What name does it have at the top?
J, I thought it was Quiles, but Quiles.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
And it says at the top right, pay period ending with a blank. What date is this the pay period ending for the defendant?
That would be the Sunday at the end of that week.
Okay, and what is the date on there?
December 23rd, 2018.
All right. Are there rows of time that he punched in prior to this leading up to December 23rd, 2018?
I'm sorry, prior to,
So this says pay period ending December 23rd of
Right.
18. Are there dates and times reflecting when he arrived leading up to that particular date?
yes, sir.
All right, let me let you hold that exhibit, and I'm directing your attention to December 19 of 2018. What time did the defendant clock in on that day?
8:08.
8:00, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, on the 19th,
Yes, sir.
8:08 a.m.
Oh, okay, 8:08 a.m. What time did he clock out on December 19, 2018?
5:09 p.m.
Yes, sir. Moving to the next day on December 20 of 2018, what time did he clock in that morning?
8:02 a.m.
And what time did he clock out on December 20th, 2018?
2:48 p.m.
Do you note on either day whether there was a time period where he clocked out to either run an errand or go to lunch or do anything on his own personal time?
Do I see it on here?
Do you see any lunch clock out on either date, December 19 or December 20?
No, sir.
more time, Your Honor, request to publish to the back row. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Ms. Michelle, just so you know, I'll probably give the jury a break between, after the direct, before your cross. Just want to give you a heads up.
Mr. Lindros, if there's no clock out lunch hour on December 19 or December 20 of 2018, and we see on the video that he departs the premises, is that against your policy not to clock out?
Yes, sir.
We'll look at video through your brother later, but in terms of this timesheet, is there anything you can point us to that shows that he left the premises on December 19 or December 20?
No, sir.
Now, did there come a day, sir, in early to mid-January 2019 that the police arrived at your business?
Yes, sir.
And did they arrive to conduct searches of various areas of your business?
Yes, sir.
Cooperate and assist the police in that,
Yes.
all right? Did they bring a canine and/or a police dog trained for scent to your premises?
Yes,
Did they do that on more than one occasion, if you can recall?
they did.
Did you show them around?
Yes.
Now, the areas that they were searching do you recall whether they were generally areas that were closed to the public, if you can recall?
On one occasion when they came was when I was showing them around. On that occasion, yes, area closed to the public.
Do you recall them searching in an area that was in the far back right corner of your property?
Yes, sir.
Can you give us an estimate of the entire size of Ace Pick Apart?
30 acres.
Can you give us, in your best estimate, approximately how many of those acres are restricted to employees only?
Approximately 10 acres.
So it's a pretty big area. You agree with that?
Yes, sir.
Are there cameras that monitor areas within your premises?
Yes, sir.
And who's in charge of that within your company?
My brother set the system up. Yes, sir.
He's coming right behind you, so we'll ask him generally about that. But in terms of the cameras, do you gentlemen utilize the cameras for what purpose? Is it for employees or is it for theft prevention? Explain to our jury why y'all have the cameras.
Primarily theft.
Okay. And is that theft, generally speaking, from customers and or employees, or just customers, or?
It could be for anybody, but primarily customers. Could be for anybody.
Right. Now, specifically directing your attention, this will be the last sort of area, sir. Just see if I can direct your attention directly to December 19, 2018, following through to the next day, December 20, 2018. At that time, is there anything that was unusual regarding those particular days of business?
No, sir.
Were you still on those 2 days standing in the shoes of Larry Carlson, who was the outside supervisor at that time?
Yes, sir.
So your duties were doubled up during those 2 days?
Correct.
Can you give us an estimate about how much time you personally were spending inside the office versus out in the yard on any given day?
Say I was 25% of the time outside of the office, checking on the employees, what they were up to, and 75% of the time in the office.
Okay. And is that a normal day when Mr. Carlson is present, or is that your day when he was out for those couple of months?
That's more than it would normally be.
Okay.
More time outside than it would normally be.
All right. So the 25% time period that you said you're outside, was that during the time period Mr. Carlson was out?
Yes, sir.
Does that mean 3/4 of your day around the time frame he was out, including December 19th and 20th, 3/4 of your day you were in the office?
Yes.
Do you agree, sir, that it is difficult to keep an eye on every single employee, especially the 16 or more outside employees when you're doubled up in your duties?
Yes.
Talk to me about the noise at your company. Explain that to our jury. What's it sound like if we were just standing on your premises?
Typical, I would say, commercial operation. You hear heavy machinery operating, crusher crushing, excavator, loud banging noises. That
Pretty
would
loud.
be it. Pretty loud, yes.
All right. Ever hear any popping of tires, removing tires off cars, anything like that?
Yes, sir.
Now, just in terms of an employee, when they leave, let's assume for a moment an employee left and did not clock out. Would that be something either your cameras or your eyes would have to catch to hold that employee accountable?
Yes.
You believe that could happen without your eyes and or the cameras catching that?
Anything is possible, yes, sir.
Sir? You do agree, however, that the cameras, whatever they capture, you agree with respect to what's on the cameras?
Yes, sir.
And you've actually had a chance to, just to lay a couple predicate questions for you while we're there. We're going to ask your brother extensively about it, but did you review the clips from December 19 and December 20, 2018?
Yes, sir.
Do they fairly and accurately depict the defendant's actions on each and every one of the clips that you saw prior to coming to court today?
Yes, sir, they do.
And for our record, were you shown State's Exhibit 31, which is a compilation of clips from both of those days?
Yes, sir.
And you've reviewed those, and it's your testimony that they fairly and accurately depict the defendant's movements on that day?
Yes,
Did you see him leave your premises that day, sir?
I did.
On December 19, 2018?
Yes, sir.
And we'll watch it later, but if he left the premises in the middle of the day on December 19, 2018 and didn't clock out, is that against your company policy?
Yes, sir.
Now, at the end of the day, when you close up for the day, who's the last person to leave?
It depends on the manager on duty. Would be typically me, my brother Gary. We have an office manager named Cheryl. Would be one of the three of us.
And are there efforts made either by traversing around the lot in a golf cart or otherwise, checking to make sure all employees and or customers are gone?
Yes, we have an office staff employee. Every day will drive the parking lot, make sure all the cars are gone on a golf cart, and then drive the entire 30-acre facility and make sure that all the customers are gone also.
And would you have one of your outside employees, one of those 16 plus, do this end of the day sweep?
Typically, it's an office person. On occasion, it could be an outside employee.
All right. And is the office sweep where, do you go over the entire premises?
The customer retail shopping area.
Okay. So let me ask it another way. Are the restricted areas that are only for the employees, is that part of a nightly sweep by management?
No.
And then lastly, sir, regarding a dumpster on your lot, is there one larger commercial trash dumpster on Ace Pick Apart in December of 2018?
Yes, sir.
Who was the contract through that put the dumpster there on your property?
All-American, I believe, at the time?
All right, and Mr. Billy Brown, I think, testified earlier, so you don't need to go into anything with respect to that account. But when that large receptacle was placed on your premises, how often would it fill up to where it needed to be emptied, sir?
Approximately once a week.
Right? And who made the phone call? Was it like a regular pickup, or did somebody have to call to get it picked up?
It was not a regular pickup either. I would observe with my own eyes, hey, that's full. I would immediately call All-American, it's full, come and get it. Sometimes an employee in the production area would, hey, John, it's full, order one, and then I would call and order a pickup.
Once you called with that particular employee from All-American, would they come pick up the receptacle and empty it within a day or so of you calling?
Yes, same day or next day typically.
So if you were, for example, if you were advised it's full on December 19th, is it your testimony that by December 20th, that receptacle would have been hauled off?
Yes, sir.
You recall, I know it's been many years, but can you recall whether you called on December 19th?
I have no recollection. Well, I'm sure I'm the one that called.
Right.
Whether or not I saw it or someone told me to call, I have no recollection of it.
Sure. And Mr. Brown testified to that, but just in terms of you sitting here, it's emptied once a week and you call to have it removed.
Yes, sir.
If you got to that once a week time period, what day generally would it be? It was like middle of the week, or can you recall?
I don't recall. Could
So-
be any day.
Is it safe to assume this? When it's full, doesn't necessarily mean 7 days. Is that correct?
Doesn't necessarily mean 7 days. Depends on the inflow of cars, how much garbage. If we buy a lot of vans that are full of garbage or cars that have there's not a typical, I can't say, I called every Thursday typically.
All right.
That would be hard to say.
How big is this particular dumpster?
It's a 40-yard dumpster. I would say it's the size of the jury box, as tall as the top of the paintings behind them.
The top of the paintings of the judges behind.
Correct.
Okay. Upwards of, can you just give us an estimate in feet?
How tall is that approximately? 7 feet.
Okay. Was the defendant himself capable of operating equipment on your premises?
Yes, sir.
You ever see him emptying items into, for example, that particular receptacle?
Yes, sir.
Would that be unusual?
No, sir.
Would that be something he would do commonly?
Yes.
Would it also be something that would be commonly expected of the defendant to come advise you that receptacle is full?
Yes.
One moment, Your Honor. Yeah, I'll ask. That's fine. Very briefly, Your Honor, just a couple follow-up, Mr. Lindros, before I sit down. What was the common operating hours of Ace Pick Apart in December of 2018?
It's during our winter hours, for the operating hours are 8 to 5.
All right. And having reviewed some of the video clips that the jury will see, I think, with the next witness, did you observe the defendant on either December 19 or December 20 carrying duct tape?
Yes, sir.
Would you tell our jury what specific reason, if any, the defendant would be carrying duct tape in the yard?
There's no typical duty. I don't want to say there's never any occasion, but there's no typical duty that would require it.
All right. And then on that map, sir, I just want to make sure to point out for our jury, when you turn in to your business off of what the map shows as Main Street, when you turn in up there, would you have to park in the employee area, or can you go other areas in your property in a vehicle?
You should be parking in the employee parking lot, which is the same as the customer parking area. Can you go elsewhere? At that time, I would say possibly.
Okay.
I don't.
In a vehicle?
Typically, no. I don't recall at that time what was going on with the new property that we recently purchased, the cement area.
All right. If you turn in off of Main Street, can you drive into this area, what you call the old cement factory?
At the time, I would say no.
Okay. When you turn in and come down to the employee parking, can you turn in and come into the interior portion?
Well, can I take a step back? At the time, I would say no, there were no typical operations going on in that cement factory. Could there have been access for reasons at that time? Perhaps. So I don't want to comment either way.
Okay. Tough to
in essence.
remember?
Tough to remember.
Okay. And then lastly, with regard to the clips, I want to ask you about, with respect to clothing. Did you see, either on December 19, December 20, 2018, the defendant walking out of the office with an additional item of clothing in his arms? And if so, what is that?
I'm sorry, say that again?
Yes, on either December 19, December 20th, when you reviewed the video clips, did you see the defendant walking out of the office with an additional item of clothing under his arms?
Additional item of clothing under his arms?
Or holding in his hands?
Not that I recall.
Okay, we'll let Mr.
Didn't
your
study it
brother-
that closely.
All right. Let me ask it this way. When you get issued like a rain suit or a shirt
Right.
or something like that, where would you go in the premises to retrieve that from the company?
If someone's wearing, I did see him wearing a rain suit on the 20th in the video, which was different than anybody else. I can't say for sure that we don't have that on premises to give people, but it would typically be their own.
Okay. So if he's walking out of the office holding an article of clothing, to your knowledge, it's nothing that would have been issued through your office?
If he walked in and said, "It's raining, do you guys have a spare raincoat in the thing?" Maybe we would have said, "Yeah, here you go." But it wasn't something that we typically issued to all employees.
All right. Now, with respect to that last comment you made, just a quick follow-up. On December 20th, you've reviewed all those video clips?
Yes.
And you said he was the only employee that day wearing an all-yellow rain suit?
As far as I can tell, yes.
One moment, Your Honor. Nothing further. Thank you, sir.
All right, members of the jury, we're going to take our mid-morning break at this point. It's 10:51. We'll come back out at 11:15, and we'll go from there. Please remember, don't discuss the case among yourselves or each other. Have a nice lunch break. Or, excuse me, have a nice break, not lunch break yet. All right, Mr. Lindros, you're more than welcome to exit the courtroom, and we'll call you back out around 11:15 and have you take the stand just as you are now to begin the cross by defense attorneys.
Yes, Your Honor, thank you.
You guys may have a seat, of course. The jury's outside our presence, as is Mr. Lindros. We'll take a break here in a moment. One thing I wanted to add, to circle back to our conversation earlier regarding the transcript. So standard instruction 2.6, use of transcripts of recordings, I'm reading verbatim. This instruction is not intended to apply to a recording of a conversation in any language other than English. That's not, to my knowledge, not implicated in this case. It also says, in case of disputed transcripts, see Martinez v. State, 761 Southern 2nd, 1074. It's a Florida Supreme Court case from 2000. I'll also cite to McCoy v. State, 853 Southern 2nd, 396. It's a Supreme Court case from 2003. It talks about having a hearing outside the jury's presence, of course. You would think pretrial to resolve any disputes as to the transcript. It does also talk about how the preferred method is to the parties stipulate to the accuracy of the transcript. However, if that cannot be accomplished, I think we're looking at a long afternoon to accomplish this work prior to tomorrow, outside the jury's presence, of course. How that fits our timeline, I don't know. I'm mentioning it now at our first break, just to kind of give you a heads up. We can discuss it later as to how you guys think we should best resolve it. I think you guys should talk about any inaccuracies you guys believe, see if the state agrees to those, and see how that changes. But I think it would require a hearing if there are disputes, and potentially evidentiary based on some of the case law I read, for the state to lay any kind of foundation to their to build up the accuracy of it, whether it be through participants of that audio recording. So I'm mentioning it now just to kind of give you a heads up, because I think it may change course of what we do this afternoon. I don't want to keep you guys late, of course, but if I have to let the jury go early so we can accomplish this ahead of tomorrow, we may have to do so. So,
Yes, sir. May I put one other case on the record for the court?
of course.
Davis v. State, 121 Southern 3rd, 462. Again, that's Davis, 121 Southern 3rd, 462, Florida Supreme Court case out of 2013. And it basically stands for the proposition that if the trial court cannot determine what is being said in parts of the transcript, but the transcript is otherwise audible, the court should use a jury instruction that tells the jurors to rely upon what they hear in the recording and not rely upon the transcript, which of course, Your Honor, adheres to what the standard instruction says regarding that anyhow, but I just want to point out there's a case that says when there are parts that are in dispute, the court can give sort of a further cautionary instruction. Again, that's Davis, State, 121 Southern 3rd, 462, Florida Supreme Court case, 2013.
Yeah, I came across that case as well, but that's only after only after a hearing, though, isn't it?
I haven't read the body, Judge. We just came across it, but yes, I mean, we're getting into it, but yes, and I understand the court on the timeliness issue, and again,
Well, the timeliness is one thing, but I'm saying that proposition you cited it for does not obviate the need for a hearing if there are disputes.
the state agrees.
Okay. So we will address it maybe after the lunch hour, once you guys have a chance to talk about it. I probably will give the jury a longer lunch, given it's Monday, more jurors are in the courthouse. I just wanted to bring it to your attention so we can handle it accordingly, and you guys can discuss it as you deem fit. So we'll be in break until 11:15.
Yes, sir.